Welcome back. This is Tom, and this is Tom's Radio Room Show. And I just did a show about these headphones, and I got the idea. It's not a new idea to me, but it made me remember something from this book right here, The Nifty Easy Guide to Adventures in DXing. And this is mainly geared towards amateur radio operators, but a lot of the material in this book is good for just shortwave listeners. And I'm going to show you a few pages out of this book. I think it's a pretty darn good book. I showed you last couple of shows, Chapter 2. Get to Chapter 2 here. Chapter 2 was DX operating practices, and the first subparagraph was effective listening. And basically what the author said is you need to get you a set of earbuds or headphones to improve your listening capability. And I told you all about that and showed you these headphones in the previous shows. And then the next thing he talks about is knowing your radio. You know, these new radios have got all kinds of controls on them. And you need to learn how to use those controls to improve your listening. And if you're using a SDR, software-defined radio, where you've got hundreds of controls on your computer, you need to learn those controls, those filters and stuff like that, to improve your reception capability. So that's the way he gets into how you can do that, things to look for. And then further on, again, if you're a ham, he talks about knowing your phonetics, A, alpha, B, Bravo, and so on. Again, if you're going to be transmitting, and know your common cue signals. That's a short set of letters to mean something, like a QSO. A QRM means interference. I'm getting QRM, things like that. Again, that's if you're going to transmit, or if you're listening when somebody says one of these things, to know what it means. You know, what's QRV? So there's a nice little table, tells you what those common things are. And then it goes into conduct, how you should conduct yourself. And then, Chapter 3, it goes into station requirements. Again, talks about transceivers, but a lot of things he talks about is the receiver section of a transceiver. And he even has a little checklist here. Come on, camera. Oh, I don't have it on autofocus. Well, forget that. It ain't going to autofocus. I turned that off because it's kind of a catch-22. If I got autofocus on, I could bring it up close and it'll eventually focus in. But if I'm moving around a lot, it's constantly focusing. So I don't know which one to use. Anyway, so here's a list. Transceiver in this case, selection checklist. You know, what frequency capability it should have, what kind of filters, stuff like that. Then it talks about antennas and towers. What's the simplest antenna you can get away with? Some options with antennas. Lightning protection, that's important. And then down here it talks about amateur radio world maps. You can get these maps that gives you reference material as far as various codes, so that when somebody has a prefix to their call, you know where they're at, or approximately where they're at. And then here's some actually maps that he's talking about. And then we get into contesting. And then there's a nice chapter here. Now this is applicable to both amateur radio operators and shortwave listeners, is propagation. And it gives you some basic about propagation. I still don't understand all the ins and outs of propagation. And then here's a nice 2-page chart of propagation characteristics by band. And it gives you each of the, again, amateur radio bands, but they're close to the international bands, and what to expect. When's the best time to use them, night or day, summer or winter, and some characteristics of each of the bands. And then it shows you this little chart that you've seen before and tells you how to read this chart. Again, it's related to propagation and listening conditions. Here's a chart of beacons. These are stations that continuously transmit like a CW code, and it gives you an indication of whether you're able to receive things. You know, you can actually get a little software program that tells you when a particular station should be broadcasting, because each station broadcasts at a certain time. So you know if, say it's 10:10 and you're on 14.1 megahertz, then it must be whatever, United Nations or whatever, or Australia. So that's a nice table to have. You can get most of this stuff off the internet, but it's all in one concise book. And then it talks about DX clusters and various websites, documenting, how do you document a contact. Here's some QSL cards. What else do we have? Here's some examples of QSL cards that you get from other amateurs. And you, even though you might not be an amateur, but if you're listening to the amateur radio bands and you hear somebody, you can actually send them a report and they'll send you a QSL card saying, you know, acknowledging that you did receive them. You know, that's not a good example. Here's a good example right here. Here's 2 QSL cards. That's kind of neat to get. So you can not only do this with international broadcast stations, you can do it with amateurs. Then it talks about this chapter here. This is chapter 8. And this is DXing on the top and magic bands. What they mean by that, the highest meter band, the lowest megahertz band, which is 160 megahertz for amateur radio operation. Type of antenna you should use. Also, here's a section on 6-meter propagation characteristics and the equipment you need to work 6 meters. Now I have a technician's license, so I can work 6 meters. Everybody yelling and screaming there? No, maybe not. It talks about DX clubs and organizations, most of which are on the internet, that you can join and communicate with people via the internet. And then that's about it. So it's a cute little book. Let me see. It's about 110 pages. It's about $17, I think, on Amazon, for instance. That's one place you can get it. And it's the Nifty Easy Guide to Adventures in DXing. And one of the authors is Jeffrey Cantonor. So if you enjoyed this show, please give me a thumbs up. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye-bye.